What's up, everybody? My name's Jack, and today we're going to be building a Cardano stake pool using the CoinCashew guide and Ubuntu LTS. For this project, you'll need 3 computers, 2 of which need 16 gigabytes of RAM as well as 4 core processors. You'll also need at least 120 gigabyte SSDs in each of these. Your third computer has no recommended specs. It's just going to be used for your air-gapped offline machine. For my stake pool, I use an old HP EliteBook for my air-gap and Dell Optiplex 920s for my relay and block producer nodes. Now, before we begin, make sure that all your machines have Ubuntu LTS installed onto them. I'm going to walk you through each step in the CoinCashew guide, talk over any nuances, and get this stake pool up and running. All right, guys, so we have our fresh install of Ubuntu LTS here on PC number 1, which is going to be our block producer node. I'll let you know when we switch over to PC 2 as well as PC 3 for our air-gapped offline machine. But we're going to start by doing the preliminary configurations on our block producer. So we're going to go ahead and open up our CoinCashew guide, link in the description box below. And we're going to start with installing Cabal and GHC. The first thing that we're going to do is open up a terminal with Control-Alt-T. And then we need to just start copy pasting these commands into the terminal line. So it's a pretty straightforward process. Overall, it's really just a copy paste job from here on out. And there are some nuances which we'll go over as we run into them, but really it is just copy pasting commands into the Ubuntu terminal. We're going to install libsodium now. Just know that the last line, you'll need to press return one more time. So whenever you're pasting multiple lines of code into the terminal, so you see here it left sudo make install. That's the last line in this install libsodium command. So we need to press return one more time. Don't forget to do that. It can mess up your whole node if you forget to put in one command. So just be really careful and make sure when you're pasting multiple lines into the terminal that you are pressing enter at the end. So this one has a little bit of a nuance. We need to press return, P for prepend, no to the Haskell server language, no to stack, and then press return one more time. All right, now that Cabal and dependencies are installed, we need to add the path variable to bash RC and then install GHC. So again, just copy pasting in there. So for this one, if you're running your node or your stake pool on mainnet, just know you can copy paste that right into the terminal. But for me, I'm going to open up a text file here. And I'm just going to change this command from mainnet to testnet. But again, if you're doing this on mainnet, no need to change this command. Move on to our next section here, compile the source code. So this command will take quite a long time. It'll say resolving dependencies for a while. It could be 30 minutes, it could be 2 hours. So just be patient with it. This command also takes a long time to build the Cardano node from the source code. So I'm going to go grab a cup of coffee and I'll be back once this is all done. All right, guys, now that we have configured the build options, we need to update the Cabal config project settings and reset the build folder. So just copy paste this next set of commands into the terminal. And then we need to build the Cardano node and the CLI from the source code. So again, this will say resolving dependencies for quite some time. Just sit tight and be patient. You didn't do anything wrong. I'll see you guys when this finishes up. All right, guys, now that we have built the Cardano node and the CLI from the source code, we need to move them into the user local bin. So I'm going to show you guys exactly what I mean. So if we go to other locations, computer, user, local, bin, we'll see that there's nothing in there. But once we punch in these commands, it's going to move the files we just generated into there. You can see one got in there, the CLI, and now let's do the Cardano my node. There it is. So those are in the user local bin, and now we can verify that they got to the right place and that they have the right versions. So there we go. Perfect. Now we're going to move on to configuring the block producer node. And we're going to go ahead and copy paste this command into the command line. And what that's going to do, if we go ahead and click that, it's going to generate a testnet topology file with the contents in there. So what we're going to do, instead of using this right off the bat, which we will use it eventually, in order to get our initial sync to the blockchain, we're going to go to my website at mainblockchain.com/MISC1. I'll leave that link in the description box below. And we're going to go ahead and copy paste the topology file. I'm doing it on testnet, so you can use, so I'm using that one, but if you're doing that on mainnet, use this one. And we're just going to go ahead and replace the contents of that file with this. And I'm going to thank Alex D 1985 on the Cardano forums for this line of code. What this is going to do is it's going to help us sync the node to the blockchain before we sync the relay node and the block producer together. Because eventually what's going to happen is the block producer is going to speak with our relay node and it's going to sync from the blockchain. It's going to pull its information from that relay, but we don't have the relay set up yet. So we want to make sure that this node can sync to the blockchain while we are setting up our relay. So let's go ahead and go back to our CoinCashew guide now. The CoinCashew guide says to stop at this point and go back and do our relay node and our air-gapped offline machine before we move forward, but we're going to go ahead and disregard that. There's actually no point in doing the relay node or the air-gapped before we generate our startup scripts. So I want to go ahead and generate these startup scripts first and get the node started and syncing to the blockchain, and then we can move on to doing our relay in the meantime. So again, just going through here, copy pasting these commands. What these are doing are, again, creating startup scripts, but it's also making it so whenever you turn on this computer, whenever you boot this PC, it will automatically start your Cardano node. So it's a really, really useful script. And now we're going to go ahead and move on to operation, to starting the nodes. We're going to go ahead and start the block producer here. And now we can monitor that block producer through, well, first of all, let's do the journals in this section. Copy paste that command and we can see it's syncing all that information from the blockchain. We're going to open up another terminal, again, Control-Alt-T, and we're going to open up GLiveView now. So we're going to go ahead, copy paste that command in there. I'm going to copy paste it in again for good measure. Sometimes when you need to type in your password on a command that has multiple lines of code, it can mess things up. So I always just copy paste that one in again. And then for this code, if you're running on mainnet, you can just copy paste that right into the terminal. But in my case, so I'm running on testnet, I need to actually change this command right here from mainnet to testnet. Copy paste that in there, and now we can open up GLiveView, which is going to give us an active display of where our node is at in syncing to the blockchain. So we're going to leave this going for now. It says relay up here. Don't worry about that. That's going to change to core eventually. But as of right now, we're just going to leave this block producer and we're going to move on to PC number 2 to get our relay node all set up and configured as well. Oh, and one last thing before we move over to our relay node, we're going to take a USB drive. It's got to be 16 gigabytes or greater. USB 3.0 is preferred but not required. 2.0 will get the job done. So we're going to plug it into this PC. So we're going to go again to computer, user, local bin, and we're going to copy these to our USB 3.0 drive. And once those have successfully copied over, we can eject our USB drive. It's going to take a little while, so just be patient with it. But once that USB drive is able to be ejected, once you've got your CLI and your Cardano node copied over to the USB drive, we can go ahead and eject it and move on over to our relay. All right, guys, we're on PC number 2 now, which we're going to make into our relay node, going through basically the exact same steps as we did on our BP or block producer node. Before we do any of that, though, we need to port forward our router, which is relatively simple. I can't show you this part in detail, but I will leave a helpful link in the description box below for your reference. Basically, what you need to do is log in to your home router, go to the port forwarding or firewall sections, find the PC that you're running your relay node off of, then allow external and internal connections on port 6000 for that PC. Let's plug in our USB drive. We're going to copy the Cardano node in the CLI that we just took from our block producer. We're going to copy it to our desktop first, just to make things a little bit easier for us. All right, now we can go ahead and eject the USB. And we're going to open up a terminal. Control-Alt-T. And you don't need to do this part. This part just might save you a little bit of time. What we're going to do is we're going to move the CLI and the node that we generated on our block producer node to our relay node's user local bin. That way we don't need to do it on our relay node here. So it'll just save us a little bit of time. So I'm going to go sudo mv. Let's actually find, if we go into properties here, go ahead and just copy the file path there. Cardano-CLI, and then we're going to do space, and we're going to go user local bin. Type in our password. You can see it got moved there. User local bin. can check and we can see that it was last modified March 9th. So the replacement was successful. We have put in our Cardano node and our Cardano CLI to the user local bin. So we don't even need to worry about building the node or the CLI this time, which should save us some time. So that out of the way, let's jump into our command line here. So just start copy pasting everything else. Remember, enter, P for prepend, node of the server language, node of stack, enter again. It's the same thing for both the relay and the block producer. All right, now that libsodium is installed, you can move on here to configuring the file path, installing GHC. You can see I was already messing around with some node projects here, so it says that GHC is already installed. But don't worry, it won't say that for you, but don't worry about it. Just let it install. This should be the up-to-date version. Everything should be fine. Now again, for this section, if you're running on mainnet, just copy paste it into the terminal. Perfect. Now we can make sure everything's updated in the correct version. Perfect. Haskell is quite glorious, I will admit. So as you can see, we moved on to the next section to compile the source code. Just again, keep copy pasting. We need to go through this part again to configure GHC. We won't need to build the Cardano node from the source code again though. All right, guys, now that the build options are configured on Cabal, we just need to update the Cabal config project settings and reset the build folder with this command. Just copy paste it in there. And then we don't need to build the Cardano node from the source code. We also don't need to copy the CLI and the node into the directory because we've already done that prior. But we can check to make sure that everything's functioning properly. We can see that when we punch in this command that it is registering the Cardano node and the Cardano CLI that we have copied over from our block producer. So let's go ahead and move forward to configuration. We're going to just keep copy pasting. That's the theme of this guide. We're going to skip over the block producing node section, go to configure relay node. We're going to copy that in there, but we're going to do the same thing that we did with our block producer and go to MISC1. I'm going to grab the testnet version, copy that, and then we're going to open up our topology file, paste that in there, save it down. Then go back to CoinCashew here. See, it's talking about port forwarding here as well. We're going to skip over the air-gapped offline machine section. Skip over to creating the startup scripts. Make sure you're tabbed over to relay node rather than block producer, and then we can just continue copy pasting into the terminal here. All right, now we can go ahead and start the node and let it sync up to the blockchain. So again, go to the journals to monitor, and you can open GLive View to monitor as well. Yours is going to take, like we saw in the block producer node, it's going to sync from 0% to 100%. Just let both your relay and your block producer sync up before we move on to the next steps. So once your node is totally synced, we're going to move on to, not to this step, for generating the keys. We'll talk about that in a following section. Skip on over from the next step. Next step again, past registering your stake pool, past verifying stake pool options, and into configuring topology files. So we're going to go ahead and just start copy pasting these into the terminal. I'll show you what this does in a moment. Add our permissions. Perfect. That's the exact message that we want. Nice to meet you. Don't do that more than once an hour. The network will be grumpy with you. Create a cron tab, and that should generate in the Cardano My Node section. You can see we just generated a cron tab. That's exactly what we want. Now we're just going to pretend that 4 hours have passed because it really doesn't matter that much. We're going to move on to our next step, which is to update the topology files on the relay node. So we're going to go ahead and copy this into a text file. And we're going to put in our block producer's IP address right here. Throw it in the terminal. Then we're going to add permissions to that. Restart the node. Let's move on to PC number 3, our air-gapped offline machine. All right, guys, so we are over at PC number 3 now, our air-gapped offline machine. It's not offline yet. We can leave it online a little bit longer, but we will need to put into airplane mode before we generate our cold keys. So I'll talk about that in a moment. But first, we need to open up step 6 of the CoinCashew guide, which is configuring the air-gapped offline computer. So what we need to do is open up a terminal and just copy-paste this command right in there. And then we need to take our USB 3.0 drive, plug it in, and we're going to take the Cardano node. Here we're going to copy those right to the desktop and do the same thing that we did on our relay node. So sudo mv user local bin, or excuse me, we need to go back here and get the properties of the nodes here. So home, paste that in there, desktop, Cardano -node, put a space in between, and perfect. And we'll do the same thing for the CLI, home, air gap. Perfect. Now we can go ahead and check our bin here. Perfect. All right, now that we've done that, we can add the execute permissions to the files. Perfect. And now we're going to skip over the startup script section. Skip over starting the nodes and go to the generating keys for the block producer node. Now, we're going to scroll past this first command and to this one right here. So before we generate these, we need to go up to our network, or our network settings, and we're going to put our computer into airplane mode. So we can turn off Wi-Fi, turn off our network. In my case, I'm not going to do this because I'm running this on testnet. I don't care if my testnet pool gets hacked. And I also need to do network work on this computer later on, meaning I'm uploading the video that I'm recording right now through Google Docs to send to my primary workstation so I can edit it. So there's no point in me actually turning off the network for the time being, but you need to do this if you're running this, especially if you're running this on mainnet, because if your cold keys get compromised, if they are exposed to the network, then you could lose your entire pledge for your pool. So it's really important that you take these parameters seriously and keep your cold keys offline. So let's go ahead and generate them. We'll generate the directory here. Generate the keys. And we don't need to do this section yet because we need to punch in these to the block producer to get our start test period for this command. So we'll save this for later, and we're going to jump back to our block producer now. All right, guys, now that we're back on our block producer, we're going to first update our topology file. So let's open up a terminal here. And actually, before we paste it into the terminal, go ahead and open up a new text file, fresh one. Paste it in there, and then we're going to take the public IP address of our home network. So just type in Google, what is my IP address? Copy that, or paste it into the terminal rather. Now I'll fix the topology file. You can double check to make sure it worked by going into Cardano mynode, testnet topology, and seeing that it did in fact copy over properly. So now that we've done that, we should restart the node. All right, and now that we've done that, we can move on to generating our keys. We'll need to wait until our node is at a full sync again before we generate our keys though. So let's just wait a moment. Perfect, so our node is fully synced now. go ahead and start generating our KES keys. I've already done this on our air gap, remember? Oh, you know what it is? Just going to change this to testnet. In fact, we want to change it to testnet magic. So let's go ahead, mainblockchain.com/MISC1. It's like a certain testnet code that you need. Here it is. Let's copy that, put it in the command. There we are. Now we can go back here. Perfect. Now we have the information that we need to generate the node cert, or the operational cert, from our air-gapped offline machine. So we need to put in 404 to this command. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a new text file, and we're going to transfer this text file, these commands, via USB to our air-gapped offline machine. So let's go ahead, paste that in there. Start KES period is 404. I'm going to copy that, paste it into there. Let's go ahead and save that as, make sure, there we go, okay. Save that down in our USB as miscellaneous. Oh, and one last thing you need to copy over is you need to go into Cardano MyNode, find your kes.v key, and copy that to your USB as well. You're going to move that to your air gap. All right, guys, now we're back over on our air-gapped offline machine. The first thing we need to do is open up our USB, open up the code that we just put in that text file, and then we also need to copy our kes.v key over to the cold keys directory. So let's just throw that in there. And then we need to update our file path here. So it's going to be the same as the node.s key and the node.counter. I'm going to paste that in there, copy it, open up a terminal, paste it in there, and it's going to generate a node.cert file. There it is. It's in home. We can move that over into Cardano MyNode though. And make sure you copy your node.cert file. Copy that into your USB because you're going to need to bring that over to your hot environment as well, to your block producer. All right, guys, now that we're back on our block producer, the first thing we need to do is open up our USB and copy this node.cert to our Cardano MyNode folder. So we'll copy paste it in there, and now that it's in there, we can move on to our next step to create a VRF key pair. So let's go ahead and I'll clear out this terminal. These should actually be in that directory, so I'm going to copy those into the Cardano MyNode folder. I'm going to go ahead and delete these ones because we already got them in there. Okay, perfect. We're actually going to CD back into that folder. CD Cardano MyNode. Perfect, so we're back in. Update VRF key permissions to read only. Let's go ahead and do that. Stop our stake pool. Let's copy paste this command in there. Start the block producer again. Perfect, and now we just wait and let it sync. All right, guys, so at this point in the process, you should see your GLiveView output change from relay-testnet to core-testnet. You're also going to want to have eventually one outgoing connection and one incoming connection. That depends on how many relay nodes you had. If you had 3 relay nodes, you'd want 3 incoming, 3 outgoing, so on and so forth. You cannot produce blocks without at least 1 incoming and 1 outgoing connection. But for the time being, let's move on to setting up our payment and our stake keys. So there's only one command that we need to put in here on the block producer before we move back over to our air gap. So let's go ahead and copy this segment. And because we're on testnet, we need to change it. As you can see, I already have the command put in there. I just changed the parameter to testnet magic. So we're going to go ahead and copy that into a fresh terminal here. Perfect. So we generated a params.json file, and then we do need to go over to our air gap machine to start working on these commands. So I'll see you guys on the other side here. All right, guys, so we're back over on our air gap machine now, and what we need to do is open up our USB drive and grab our commands. So as you can see, I just copied everything over into a text file from those commands we were looking at in the block producer, just so I don't need to open up or access the network on the air gap machine. This is what you'll need to do in order to keep your cold keys secure. So make sure to be copying over all those commands from CoinCashew into a text document like this, rather than actually opening up a web browser and exposing your air gap machine to the network. So let's go ahead and start with this command. Open up a terminal here. Paste. It's really just as easy as copy pasting. A lot of people think running a stake pool is complicated. Half of it is literally just copy pasting lines of code that people have already written into the terminal. So this last one is going to generate a payment address. So what we're going to do is we're going to take that payment address. I'm going to copy that over to our USB, and then we're going to jump back over to our block producer node. All right, so we are back over on our block producer node here. The first thing that we need to do is take this payment address from our USB and copy it over to our Cardano MyNode folder. Then we're going to run this command. I don't think it's going to pick up the payment address, but we'll see. Oh, actually it will, because we're already entered into the Cardano MyNode folder. So you can see it output a testnet payment address. Yours is going to be a mainnet payment address. You're going to have to fund that address in order to put up the deposit to register your stake pool. So at this point, you're going to take that payment address and you're going to send 505 Cardano to it. In my case, I'm just going over to testnet faucet. I'm going to copy this payment address here. Toss it in here. Say I'm not a robot. Pick out the traffic lights. It's going to send me 1,000 testnet Cardano to that payment address. And what we're going to do to check to make sure that was received is we're going to go to our next command here. We got to alter it because it's on mainnet here. So let's go ahead, paste that in, grab our testnet parameter, paste it in, copy that. And you can see we have not received our Cardano yet, but we will momentarily, I'm sure of it. And there it is. So you can see we received 1,000 testnet Cardano. Then we can move forward onto our next step here, which is going to be registering our stake address. So we need to jump back to our air-gapped offline machine. So I'll see you guys on the other side of that. All right, guys. So again, the first thing we need to do on our air gap is go to our USB. Grab the command that we copied over. Copy that right into the terminal. There it is. Okay. So we're going to copy that over to our hot environment again. Perfect. Eject the USB, and I'll see you guys back on the block producer. All right, guys, now that we're back over on our block producer node, the first thing that we need to do is go to our USB and grab that Stake.cert and copy it to our Cardano MyNode folder. And we can start with these commands. So we're going to go ahead and open up a text file because this one has the mainnet address in it. We need to replace that. But you don't need to. Again, I've said that a million times, but if you're running this on mainnet, don't alter any of these commands. I'm only doing this because I'm running on testnet. Great, there's the current slot. We need to alter this one too, I believe. I think mainnet's snuck in there somewhere, is it not? There it is, okay. See, those mainnets can be sneaky when you're running this on testnet, so watch out. Copy that, paste it into the terminal. Everything turned out okay, looks like it. Perfect. And then go back to our guide here. So we're creating a raw transaction here, or a temporary transaction. So let's see if that's been generated. Yeah, there it is, tx.temp. So we're eventually going to sign that with our air gapped, I believe. Just keep going with the copy paste work, guys. It's the name of the game. All right, we just created a raw transaction file now. And we need to copy that to our cold environment, sign off on it, bring it back to the block producer, and then submit it to the mainnet. So with that being said, let's go ahead and copy this transaction over to our USB. So it's copied to the USB now. We can go ahead and eject the USB, and I'll see you guys over on the air gap. All right, guys, now that we're back on our air gap, the first thing that we need to do is open up our USB drive, and we need to copy this raw transaction into our Cardano MyNode folder. You probably won't already have one in there. I do, so I'm just going to replace it. And the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to open up that command that we got from the CoinCashew guide, and we're going to delete the mainnet section here. That is actually incorrect. And so let's go ahead, paste that in there. We can see that what happened is it took the raw transaction and then the out file, signed the transaction using the stake.s key and the payment.s key. So now that that has happened, we can go ahead and copy the signed transaction to our USB and then eject the USB and bring it back to our block producer node. All right, guys, so we're back on our block producer now. So let's go ahead and move forward to the next command, which is to submit this signed transaction to the mainnet. So the way that we do that is we got to take the signed transaction off of our USB, bring it over to the Cardano MyNode folder, and then we're going to copy this. We need to bring up a text file, change that to testnet. And as you can see, the transaction has been successfully submitted. So now that we have successfully registered our staking address, we can move on to actually registering our entire stake pool. That brings in this command in the next section, and I want to paste that into a text file. So that way we can name our pool. So I'm going to go test MBX pool description. This is a test testnet stake pool, and the ticker we're going to name it MBT for main blockchain test. And then for our home page, we'll just leave it at the default there. We don't even need to change that. Paste it in there. Next command there, which creates a pool metadata hash. We're going to copy the pool metadata hash txt that we just created, which is going to be, let's find it. There it is. We're going to copy that to our USB, and we're going to bring that over to our air gap. I'm not going to show you guys that because you've already seen me bring files back and forth between the air gap and the block producer a million times at this point. All you need to do is copy that from your USB into your Cardano MyNode folder on your air gapped offline machine. So now that that's taken care of, let's create a GitHub and register our stake pool. All right, guys, so I've logged into my GitHub. All I need to do now is hit new repository, make a public repository. I'm going to name it testnet stake pool. And then we're going to not tick any of these, make sure it's a public repository and create it. And then we are going to upload an existing file. And the file that we're going to upload is going to be our, not our meta hash, but our pool metadata.json. So this file, copy paste into there, commit the changes. Perfect. Now we click here, click raw, and then this is the URL that we're going to need. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to take this URL, go to tinyurl.com, create the URL, copy it. Put it on a clipboard or a text document, save it for later, or actually save it for right now, because our next command is going to be this one. Now we can copy this command, paste it in the terminal, spits out our hash. Now we can start crafting our transaction. So now we can build these on our MISC document on our USB. So let's delete these. We're going to need to do the Pool.cert and the Deleg.cert on the air-gapped offline machine in a second. So let's just get these prepared. We also need to get the vrf.vkey off of our block producer and into the user local bin of our air gap. So let's go ahead and grab this, the vrf.vkey. We're going to copy this to our USB. And then we're going to grab that tiny URL that we just created. Add it to the metadata. We're going to change that to testnet. Oops. We're going to change this, the pool pledge, to 125 Cardano. We're going to change the pool cost to 340. That's the minimum. 0% pool margin. That's also the minimum. Your pledge can be whatever you want it to be. It could be 1 ADA. It could be 100,000 ADA. And then going to register our relay node here. Put in our relay node's IP address. Good to go. So let's go ahead and save this down. We're going to bring it over to the air gap machine now. All right, now that we're back on the air gap, our first step is to take the vrf.vkey and we're going to copy that to the desktop. We're going to do sudo mv All right, now our vrf.vkey is in our user local bin. Let's just double check that. Perfect. All right, great. So that worked after we guided the file path to our user local bin, create our Deleg.cert too. Now what we need to do is we need to grab those. So Deleg.cert needs to be copied to our USB, and so does our Pool.cert that we just generated. Now, once this copy's over, we're going to eject the USB, go back to our block producer. So I'll see you guys on the other side. All right, guys, we're back on our block producer. We just generated the Pool.cert and the Deleg.cert. It's on the USB here. We just need to take the Pool.cert here. We're going to copy this to our Cardano MyNode folder, Pool.cert and the Deleg.cert. Let's copy those both over. All right, and then we're going to continue with our commands. Oh, I copied mainnet instead of testnet. Let's redo that. There we go. Okay. Same thing with this command. We need to get the testnet out of there. Or get the mainnet out of there and replace it with the testnet. Sorry guys, setting up a stake pool is fun, but it's also a little bit exhausting, I'll be honest with you, especially when you're recording a guide on it. Okay, now we need to find the deposit fee for our pool. Now we need to take this and guide the file path on these. So this is going to need to be guided to the, although we're in, okay, so we're in that directory, so we shouldn't need to guide the file path. Since we're in the Cardano MyNode directory, like if we were not in the MyNode directory like this, then we would need to guide the file path. Like I'll show you. See, like it won't work. But if we enter the Cardano MyNode folder and put that command in, it works just fine. And it generated the, well, it's not the raw transaction, but it's like the transaction draft. Now we're about to make the tx.raw. So this is just a simple copy paste here. Another copy paste. Another copy paste. So we generated the tx.raw now. And now we need to bring it over to our cold environment. And we're going to use this command on our air-gapped offline machine. So let's go ahead and go to our MISC file here, paste that in there, save it down. That's the one on our USB. And then what we're also going to do is take our raw transaction, copy that to the USB, and bring it back to our air-gapped offline machine. All right, back on the air gap, we need to go to the volume or to the USB stick. We need to copy this transaction into the Cardano MyNode on our air gap, so we could just replace the old file from our old transaction. Don't need to keep those around. Let's go ahead and delete them or replace them. So once we've done that, now we can open up our MISC file and we can sign the transaction. So let's see if this will work right out. It did. So all the file paths are correct. And we have generated a tx.signed. We're going to copy that back to our USB and bring it back to the block producer. Back on the block producer now, we need to take our tx.signed from our USB, copy that into our Cardano MyNode folder. And then we're going to go ahead and grab this to submit the transaction to the mainnet. But of course, we need to alter it to send it to the testnet instead. Copy that, paste it in there. Transaction submitted successfully, so you have officially registered your stake pool at this point if you made it so far. One last thing that you'll need to do on your relay node in order to get the incoming and outgoing connections to your block producer is go to your Cardano MyNode folder, go to testnet topology, and just make sure that this first line here is filled in with your block producer's port and its IP address, and also that the valency is 1. So the address should be, again, your block producer's IPv4 address. The port should be 6000. In your case, I changed mine to 615. You don't need to do that. And again, the valency will be 1. Save that down, restart the node, and your block producer should connect to your relay just fine with incoming and outgoing connections. I'll show you on the relay here. You can see it says I+0 with our block producer's IPv4 address. And we'll go upstairs to see the block producer here in a minute, and it will show 1 incoming, 1 outgoing as well. All right, guys, so we're back up on the block producer here. You can see we have 1 incoming and 1 outgoing connection. Now, that's perfect. That's exactly what we need. Again, if you had multiple relay nodes, like let's say you had 3, you'd want 3 incoming connections and 3 outgoing connections, so on and so forth. So you only want your block producer to connect to your relay nodes, the relay nodes that you've actually set up personally. That way, they are exposed to the blockchain, but your block producer is not. It shields it from any malicious activity like DDoS attacks and so forth. So that's pretty much it, guys. We have registered our stake pool. We have set it up. The only thing left to do would be to register our pool on adapools.org or pooltool.io. But unfortunately, ADA Pools does not have a testnet feature. So if you want to learn more about registering your mainnet pool on ADA Pools, click the link in the description box below for a guide on that topic. But with that being said, I think that's enough for today. Please hit that like button. Please hit subscribe. Leave a comment in the comment section below. It really does help out my channel. I appreciate all your time, and I hope you all have a good rest of your day.